Welcome back to WrestleSpective, the place for all things forgotten, lost, and defunct of pro wrestling. The King of the Ring. Over the course of its 40-year history, the title has gone from house show attraction to a pay-per-view that anointed the next megastars, to something for mid-carders to do, to whatever it is they're doing now. I guess a Saudi attraction? Well, it's the early days of the tournament we're going to focus on. Its beginnings and earliest kings. This is a look back at pre-pay-per-view King of the Ring. The WWF in the summer of 1985. Still early in their national expansion, the company was hot off the heels of the first WrestleMania inside Madison Square Garden in New York City. Always looking to go bigger, the Federation decided to put on a stadium show right in their own backyard. A one-night tournament dubbed the King of the Ring. The inaugural tourney would take place July 8, 1985 at Sullivan Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. About 45 minutes from Boston, the stadium was home to the soon-to-be Super Bowl-bound New England Patriots. The WWF came out guns blazing. All the major rock and wrestling stars were on the card, attracting a crowd of 23,000, with 20,000 paid. I honestly think the 3,000 comps were probably some giveaways from the radio station WZOU who sponsored the show. Let's take a look at the tournament entries. B. Brian Blair, Bob Orton Jr., Greg Valentine, Jim Brunzell, Luscious Johnny V, Les Thornton, Paul Orndorff, Don Morocco, Pedro Morales, Ricky Steamboat, Steve Lombardi, Terry Funk, The Iron Sheik, The Junkyard Dog, The Spoiler, and Tito Santana. Interestingly, Tito defended the IC title in his tournament matches, until going to a draw with Jim Brunzell. Also interestingly, the final was heel versus heel with Don Morocco taking on the Iron Sheik. Morocco has said in interviews that he knew he couldn't be more of a heel than the Sheik. It's an American versus a foreign menace. So Morocco came up with a finish where Sheik would get all the heat on him, Rock would bleed, but Mr. Fuji would turn things around with some salt to the Sheik's eyes. Sneaky sneaky, allowing Morocco to get the win. So your first official WWF King of the Ring, the Magnificent Morocco. The only non-tournament match was the main event of Nikolai Volkov challenging Hulk Hogan for the WWF World Championship. Hogan, of course, won clean. As far as I can tell, the win wasn't acknowledged on TV, unless it was in passing on TV for some very specific market that I haven't seen. The second edition was held July 14, 1986, again at Sullivan Stadium. This year, however, saw a dramatic drop in attendance with only 12,000 fans. Returning competitors included the previous year's king Don Morocco, Paul Orndorff, Pedro Morales, the Iron Sheik, and the Junkyard Dog. They were joined this year by Billy Jack Haynes, Mike Rotundo, Rudy Diamond, George Steele, Dan Spivey, Mr. X, portrayed by Dangerous Danny Davis, Nikolai Volkov, Harley Race, and Rowdy Roddy Piper. The event also had two non-tournament matches. A special attraction match with Bruno Sammartino taking on Pete Doherty as the masked designated hitman. Great name, terrible mask. I've seen rumors that the match was originally supposed to be Bruno versus local radio personality Eddie Andelman, who longtime viewers may remember from my Wrestling for a Cure review. That charity show also had some involvement from WZOU. Andelman allegedly backed out, not wanting to go through with an actual match. While on that subject, Andelman actually had a lot more to do with putting that show together than I realized 2 years ago. It was also promoted using Mario Savoldi's promoter license. Back to the 86 King of the Ring. There was also a steel cage tag team match with the British Bulldogs defending the titles against the Dream Team, Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine. I very much want to see this match. By the end of the night, it would be Harley Race crowned as the new king of sports entertainment, when he defeated Pedro Morales in the finals. This is also the first King of the Ring that we currently have visual documentation of, as there was a spread about it in WWF Magazine with Race showing off the WZOU trophy. Also in 2020, Gino, coincidentally a radio show host, posted pictures from his trip to the show as a kid. And if you'll notice, there were cameras filming the show. I can see the Patriots logo, so I don't know if this was just for the Jumbotron. Did the stadium have a Jumbotron in '86? Either way, WWE Vault, I know you're watching, so please, if there's a chance that this show or any matches were filmed, let's find it and get that released ASAP. Thank you. So why was there a story about this house show in WWF Magazine anyway? Well, they were using the tournament win as a way to give Harley Race a gimmick. So Handsome Harley Race became King Harley Race, with a coronation taking place about a month later on TV. From the footage I've seen, there was no mention that he'd actually won the King of the Ring on TV. The third annual show was held a little later in the year, September 4th, 1987, just up the road in Providence, Rhode Island, at the Civic Center in front of about 12,000 fans. It was probably a good idea to move the show since they drew the same size crowd. Might as well make it seem fuller. This edition featured many returning names and new faces to the tournament, like Rick Martel, Haku, Randy Savage, and others. The show also had an Intercontinental title match with Jake Roberts defeating the Honky Tonk Man by disqualification. In the main event, Randy Savage and King Kong Bundy would face off to determine the new king, with the Macho Man becoming the Macho King. But not actually. Not yet, at least. He wouldn't actually use the title of King until turning back heel in 1989 and defeating King Duggan for the title, who never actually won the King of the Ring tournament. While on the topic of imposter kings, Haku and Duggan never won the King of the Ring tournament. Bobby Heenan bestowed the crown on Haku when Harley Race left the WWF. Haku then lost the title to Duggan, who then lost it to Savage, although it was 2 years after Savage actually won the tourney. So let me know in the comments, were they imposters? Or were they legitimate claims to the throne? The show would return to Providence on October 16th, 1988, attracting a crowd of about 6,700. This fourth iteration had the usual suspects for a 1988 house show, including Shawn Michaels making his King of the Ring tournament debut. The card also saw Hacksaw Duggan defeat Dino Bravo in a flag match. I'm not sure how obvious this was, but the story throughout the tournament seemed to be Ted DiBiase trying his best to keep Randy Savage from repeating as king, after Macho Man had defeated him for the WWF title at WrestleMania 4. Savage's first opponent in the tournament was Virgil, who he beat to advance. Both Savage and DiBiase worked their way to the semifinals, with $1 Million Man paying off his opponent Ron Bass, winning by forfeit, giving him an easy path to the finals. DiBiase got the win when Virgil distracted Savage. The heel's evil plan worked. DiBiase was king. While celebrating, Hercules came out to chase off the heels and send the crowd home happy. In 1989, the event again returns to the Providence Civic Center, and again it attracts an even smaller crowd of 4,500. And if I'm being honest, it's probably the worst tournament lineup they'd have to this point. Jimmy Snuka, Akeem, Bad News Brown, Tito Santana, Brutus Beefcake, Luke, Butch, Haku, Jim Neidhart, Nikolai Volkov, Rick Martel, Hercules, The Warlord, The Barbarian, The Red Rooster, and Bill Wood. Tito Santana would win the tournament, defeating former tag team partner Rick Martel in the finals. The main event of the show was Dusty Rhodes defeating the Big Boss Man in what I'm sure was a very fun match. The WWF would skip holding a tournament in 1990. The final pre-pay-per-view King of the Ring on September 7th, 1991 was again in Providence at the Civic Center with an attendance of 2,400. I don't know, maybe they should have put it on TV or held it somewhere else. Fans at the time might not have been excited for this lineup, but I certainly am. This is my era. Virgil, Hawk, Animal, The Berserker, The Warlord, Brian Knobbs, Jerry Saggs, Irwin R. Shyster, Bret Hart, Skinner, Jim Duggan, Pete Doherty, Sid Justice, Ted DiBiase, Ricky Steamboat, and The Undertaker. Incredible. Also, there was the Beverly Brothers versus the Bushwhackers. Much less stoked about that match, but maybe it's a good time. Now that's a great lineup, but we were also supposed to see the Texas Tornado, Mr. Perfect, and the Ultimate Warrior in the tournament, but SummerSlam a week prior would change the card a bit. Mr. Perfect took time off from in-ring action due to back injuries. Texas Tornado seems to have just taken most of September of '91 off. A few days after this show, his brother Chris would take his own life, so I'm not sure if that had something to do with Kerry missing this show. And Warrior was famously fired immediately after his match at SummerSlam. I don't think the Perfect vs. Warrior match had any replacement. Thankfully, we have some FANCAM footage from the show. It's grainy and not from the best view, but we still have it. So let's take a look. The show and tournament kicks off with Jerry Saggs versus Hawk. Lots of strength exchanges early on, a Jimmy Hart distraction, then there's a big cut with Sags on the advantage. Finish comes when Jimmy Hart tries to toss Sags the megaphone. It's intercepted by Hawk, who nails the Nasty Boy with it, getting DQ'd. Next up is Ted DiBiase versus Ricky Steamboat. Billed as just the Dragon, we do get Steamboat's whole fire-breathing routine, which I always enjoyed. It's a typical house show match. Lots of DiBiase taking a powder on the outside, Steamboat bringing him back in, DiBiase bumps like crazy, rinse repeat. The crowd ate it up though. That is until a headlock goes on a little too long, which leads to a boring chant. Things pick up a bit more with DiBiase on the advantage as he gets some good heat and seems to get the crowd back into the match. Steamboat goes on a tear, scores a sunset flip, the bell rings, and the Dragon thinks he's gotten the 3, but the 15-minute time limit ran out. The match is a draw. Both men are eliminated. Following that decent contest is Brian Knobbs versus Jim Duggan. Duggan obviously is super over. He's a house of fire with 3 really solid clotheslines to kick things off. Knobbs gets a little offense in, but this thing is all hacksaw, with Duggan getting the win with a schoolboy roll-up of all things. A very interesting heel versus heel matchup is next with IRS taking on the Berserker. Not much happens here, there's some back and forth, some solid brawling from the Berserker, but he's counted out when he goes berserk on the outside. IRS gets the win. Match 5 sees Bret Hart facing the challenge of Pete Doherty. The Duke of Dorchester tries to sneak attack the Hitman, but Bret catches him right away. Bret almost immediately locks in a sharpshooter, and that's all, folks. The Hitman advances. The ring attendant never even got the IC title to the timekeeper. After that quickie, we get Skinner versus Virgil. Virgil takes the advantage at the start, with Skinner slowing things down when he gets on the offensive. There's this great spot where Skinner runs right into Virgil's fist. Ted DiBiase comes out and distracts Virgil, allowing Skinner to get the win. That was pretty fun at times. Next up is a big boy battle as the Warlord takes on Sid Justice. This one is a usual WWF big man match. Pretty slow and plodding, but it's super impressive seeing Sid get the Warlord up for a powerbomb so easily. I wish they did more actual strength spots. Another big boy battle right after, it's Undertaker versus Animal. They start off hot right away. Taker sneak attacks Animal, who runs wild in response. The dead man slows it down when he takes control. Animal gets the upper hand again, and it's awesome. Paul Bearer with the distraction, which allows Undertaker to use the urn to score the pinfall. But now is the lone, non-tournament match, the Beverly Brothers versus the Bushwhackers. Look, say whatever you want about Luke and Butch in this gimmick, but it was over like Rover. Everyone that you can see in the crowd are doing the march. They get a huge pop coming out, it worked. The gimmick just worked. The heels take control in the early going and have it for a while. So much stomping. The Bushwhackers get the hot tag, and honestly the footage is so grainy I can't really tell who's who on either team. The Beverly sneak out a win with a terrible finish behind the ref's back. I can see what they were going for, but it doesn't look good. Might be the angle of the camera though. We kick off the quarterfinals with Hacksaw versus IRS. Irwin has the advantage most of the match, and just when it seems Duggan will make his comeback, IRS rolls him up with his feet on the ropes. Next up in this round is Skinner versus Bret Hart. Lots of feeling out in chain wrestling early on. Bret's working the hell out of that arm. Skinner fights back to get the advantage. The Hitman wrestles control again with some great looking head throws into the turnbuckle. Russian leg sweep, sharpshooter, Bret heads to the finals. Our third quarterfinal match sees Sid take on The Undertaker, a match we'd see again in USWA and WrestleMania 13. I think there's a casket at ringside, but it's not a casket match, and I hadn't noticed that earlier. They don't really do much, just kind of club into each other. They take turns choking each other in the corner and shoving the ref, so the match is thrown out into double DQ. Post-match, Taker and another big guy that I cannot identify toss Sid into the casket and slam the lid. So because of the Steamboat DiBiase draw, Jerry Sags got a bye into the semifinals against IRS. Sags tries to use Irwin's briefcase for something and gets rolled up. IRS moves on to the finals. Because of the double DQ from Sid and Taker, Bret Hart got a bye into the finals. It's such a heel story for him to get there. Mind you, IRS just wrestled a match, and Bret has been sitting for 2 matches. Sure, the last IRS match was quick, but still. Seemed like the roles should have been reversed in my opinion. Bret gets right to work with a headlock, then works over the arm for a while. There's a cut and IRS is on the offensive, stomping Bret on the outside. IRS working the crowd while they chant for the Hitman to get up was great stuff. Time for IRS to wear down Bret for a while with a headlock. Incredibly sweaty, I'm sure. Bret keeps hitting his signatures and going for pins to no avail, and IRS keeps sending him to the outside. Aloha Shyster denies Bret a sunset flip. We get some great Bret punches, Hitman goes for a sunset flip again, IRS holds on, fucking Hebner gets his shit in, Bret rolls up Irwin for the pin and the win to be crowned the new king, the leader of the new generation. The main event was pretty good. I'm curious to go back and watch some of the other Bret IRS matches from the time and compare them to this one. But for what it was, it had some good action and I enjoyed it. I preferred Animal vs. Undertaker though. If you want to see the full show for yourself, it can be found over at Brian Turner's VHS Rehab channel. Link in the description. There would be no tournament in 1992, but they do it all again in 1993 with Bret claiming the crown once more when they move the King of the Ring to pay-per-view. They also moved the event to Dayton, Ohio. Good decision. From here, you know the rest of the show's history. In 1997, the King of the Ring would return to the Providence Civic Center, this time drawing a crowd of a much more respectable 9,000 plus. In 1998, WWF would attempt a return to Sullivan Stadium, rechristened Foxborough Stadium, for an event called Foot Brawl. The show was scheduled for August, but tickets were slow to move. In an attempt to boost sales, WWF held a promotional event at the Cambridge Side Galleria Mall in July, where Stone Cold Steve Austin would arm wrestle Vince McMahon. Fun fact, I once bought a Farouk bone-crunching action figure from KB Toys at the Galleria. Ultimately, Austin would toss Vince into the Charles River and ticket sales would continue to move at a snail's pace, leading to Foot Brawl being cancelled. Many, including Jim Ross, have mentioned that part of the problem was people from the area knew what a pain getting to Foxborough was. There wasn't anything else to do in the area. The public transit to the stadium even now is almost non-existent. The place was starting to fall apart and would be replaced after the 2001 season. And this was before so many events were destination shows. Plus, it appears it was just going to be a house show. Maybe they would have filmed it for later release, but it didn't seem like a major event that called for a stadium. It was a stadium that needed a show instead of a show that needed a stadium kind of deal. Today, the New England Patriots have built a town within a town for Gillette Stadium with Patriot Place. There's restaurants, a movie theater, gyms, and tons of bars, including Six String that has hosted numerous Beyond Wrestling shows. I personally think they should run SummerSlam at Gillette someday. So WWE, if you're watching, and I know you are, let's get the biggest party of the summer back to New England in a real big way. And that's the story of the original run of the King of the Ring. I hope you enjoyed the bonus bits as well. Let me know what else I should cover in the comments. Also, you can support the channel by subscribing or finding me on social media, either here or here. I'm Scott from WrestleSpective. Watch wrestling, love wrestling. Thanks for watching.